So I had this little small amp that my dad had, and he gave it to me, and I'm sitting there wondering. I'm like, I'm listening, starting to get into bands that were really kind of heavier.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, telling my dad, it's like, how do they make it sound like that?
Yeah.
He goes, it's gain. He goes, and that amp doesn't have it.
Yeah.
You're gonna need a pedal. And I'm like, and I'm totally in the dark, at the time.
So you're still in the 50s.
Wow. Yeah.
When everybody was playing clean.
It was clean. Had a good tone. But yeah, it was, I wanted,
Who was the first band to use distortion? It was the Kinks.
Yeah, the Kinks, I think that's
you
when
really
it started.
Got me. I think was the first on accident. I think I heard where like they dropped the amp and then it kind of fizzed everything out and it turned into like a distortion sound. I was like, we kind of like that. Let's keep it. I think that's it. Don't quote me, but that sounds about right.
And I think because I know the Beatles used a little bit of it. I mean, but it wasn't. Just on
but that
Revolution.
Was by then distortion was established as a thing,
right?
Like it happened in between in between the history of the Beatles, where they because they used it for Revolution, and a bunch of other shit like that.
Right.
It's funny though, at the early days of guitar distortion, you can kind of tell that they were overdoing it because it was their new toy.
Yeah,
like if you listen to Revolution, that is an aggressive fucking distortion.
It's on overload to the max.
It's like it's kind of grating. But it's charming in a way because it's just like they didn't know any better,
Right.
But if they were to remaster it and redo it these days, I think it'd be a lot cleaner. It probably wouldn't have the impact that it did, at least the way it sounded.
Way it sounded.
I like the way it sounds, how it's so gritty, but they didn't know any better. It was a new toy they were playing with. So cool, like just looking back that.
And
way.
Especially when that solo comes in, it's almost kind of piercing,
right?
The way the solo is because the gain is so high on it, and it wouldn't, like you said, it wouldn't be the same if it sounded any really different.
Right.
So, but
it wouldn't be Revolution.
No, it wouldn't. It
wouldn't be. You really got me.
No, you just got to kind of leave it as it is.
Yes. What other things were impacting you around that time during we're talking what, high school?
Oh yeah. So you had this when I started getting into I want to say Linkin Park.
Yeah.
I had the first album I had, it was Hybrid Theory, which is probably one of the greatest albums that I've heard in a while. It was.
They tore it up with that album.
Yeah,
that album made a good impact.
It really did.
It is insane.
Good, big impact on our generation.
And it kind of goes down as one of those albums that's just like it's kind of like their White Album, It's definitely.
Do you think that they would be qualified for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or would you even consider them? I mean,
Linkin Park down the line. I don't think anytime soon, but down the line,
they should get it though. Down the line,
in a decade or two, they'll be recognized for sure. At least for the early 2000s kind of generation. Yeah, that were the coming of age kids in the millennials.
The millennials, very much. Yeah.
Because, like I said,
they were the band for the millennials.
Yeah, that's it. And I kind of,
there was resistance though. There was a lot of kids in high school that were like, "No, fuck Linkin Park. I'm listening to Snoop." Or whatever.
Oh yeah, so it was kind of segregated. It kind of, you had the two sides.
I think Linkin Park, in a way, for kids who grew up like the class of 05 is what me and you are. There was the rap element, and you had the rock element, and you had an electronic element, and there was even some. I think a lot of the video game community, the gaming community, came together to support Linkin Park.
Oh yeah, very much. Too. Even the anime community, because they were really prominent within the anime community.
Yeah, they enjoyed doing.
They enjoy anime and all that stuff. So yeah, they really knew how to space and get their niches. And oh my god, they were, because it wasn't just you had rock and roll people enjoying them. You could have some people that enjoyed some rap. I would find some people damn, they're not bad. They're not bad. And then when they came out with their Jay-Z album, that was even more proof. You can really enjoy both rock and rap at the same time. That album is very much underrated. Yeah, that album's totally underrated. So
I'm still I was always a Eminem fan. I'm always a Snoop fan.
Yeah,
those two just kind of really kind of did it for me.
I mean,
in the whole hip hop world.
Anything that Dr. Dre would produce.
Anything Dr. Dre had his hands on,
man,
it was great.
It was insane. That's kind of where why we have what we have today.
And you notice he's very picky on who he really focuses on. Like,
which
you know, with
good.
Eminem.
There's not enough of that these days.
No, not at all.
That's what's wrong.
But you see, the problem is like when you have guys like Dre, and then he popularizes guys like Eminem, and then Eminem gets a 50 Cent, and then all of a sudden it starts to kind of water down.
Right.
You know, like you end up getting with Tony Yayo, Young Buck, and I forget the other dude's name.
And the rest.
I mean, you know, it watered everything down, but I mean, he hit gold with Kendrick Lamar, and I mean,
yeah,
you know, so he doesn't really have to. He just got to sit back for a while and enjoy Kendrick.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, man. So we were talking about how your dad was influencing you like a lot growing up, and I was saying how I don't have that relationship with my dad, and I'm a little jealous that, you know, your dad was there with you, kind of grooming who you were as a musician, or at least what was influencing you, or would be influencing you down the line. Very fucking beautiful relationship. So tell me about that. Like, what were the things that he was kind of showing you, pretty much the 90s as it was happening back then, right?
100%. I would have to say I would at 5 or 6 years old, you know, he'd be out in the living room by himself in the morning, and I would get up, you know, and he'd be having coffee and all that, and he would have his guitar laying against the couch with his amp, and he would go right back to drinking his coffee, and he'd start playing chords on the guitar.
Oh,
and
sick.
I just sat there, and I would sit there and just watch him, you know, and he was just, you know, just doing, you know, like doing, you know, little solos, little blues solos, little like
just little
riffs, like kind of sound like little Led Zeppelin riffs and stuff like that. And I was I'm sitting there looking at him like, how do you do that? You know, it was just something that I guess naturally was drawn to. Can't really explain it other than that. It was just like you either are naturally drawn to that or you're not. You know, so with him doing that was kind of like, you know, I'd sit there and, you know, watching him, and it was just like I kind of want to really know how to do that.
Yeah, dude.
And it was something that was, I guess, you know, I tell people that, and they're just like, that is so special. That's crazy, you know, and I that's kind of what did it for me. You know, a lot of that, and then plus all his vinyl records that he had on the shelf, you know, and he, you know, showing me how to work those and all that, and you know, with him playing that, what he would do, you know, during the day, and it was just like, wow, that's something that I probably, honestly, I'm very interested in doing. You know, I think back then he had a tube amp, I believe, because back then,
well,
it was, so everything, you know, was made really well, you know. So, and it was especially coming out of the 80s, you know. And I believe he had a little one, you know, I think it was like a 12 tube amp that he had, like a single, and it sounded really good. And
tube amps are great, man. Like if you want that warm rock and roll, bluesy, even depending on how you want to set your tones,
that's
tube. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Now, right now, I'm working with a solid state, so
what we're playing on.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not playing arenas or anything. So who the fuck cares? You know
right.
You're not going to be playing the arena of J.D. Allison's?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah. It'll come. But
yeah, it'll happen. Maybe.
Yeah.
So, so where did you have other bands like in high school? Where like did you have like those garage bands that you know, every rock band kid in high school wanted to have?
That's when when I first got my guitar, I started the first garage band I tried to do. Well, we, you know, where we ended up learning like 6 or 7 of our favorite songs that we wanted to do. And I was getting, you know, obviously I was getting back into the, you know, we were reaching into the early 2000s, but I was kind of looking towards my childhood and still going off of, you know, what I grew up with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and all that. And I kind of put that into what I shaped that around of what I kind of wanted to play in a way. So that's kind of how that kind of came about of my influence. So I would shape around that, and I just started playing just nothing but 90s stuff all the time. Exactly what I grew up with when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think to even incorporate like, stuff that was new age, what was popular when I was in high school. So like I just would stick back to the roots of what I was, kind of
you
grew
stuck
up
to the 90s.
Right.
You
Yeah,
didn't
it was
really explore.
kind of crazy, and I didn't even start exploring until for a while.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was just like a self-conscious thing of like, I'm just comfortable at doing this. And then, I know these 3 chords, and especially being a beginner at the time, I knew 3 chords. So like we started doing Green Day stuff, and we started doing, a lot of, which is great songs, they're amazing, but it's just like, being 3 chords, it's like, well, I could do that, that's not too bad. I'm not doing an extravagant solo or anything, so,
yeah, exactly.
I just
keeping it simple.
Yeah. Keeping it simple. And
punk rock.
as I get, as I progress, so it wasn't, so much of a, challenge for me, at the time, and
totally.
Until I actually started, getting, playing more and, trying to challenge myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just that's kind of where it started for me. I started, I and what's crazy is I always been the kind of the creator of something, and I never really was just in a band, like, oh, I'm going to join his band, and be just a guitar player.
Yeah.
I always I had something that I kind of started, as weird as crazy as that is. I've always kind of started it, and I never was going to be a singer.
And, that's one of the things that you have in common with all the guests that we've had on this show.
Right.
And that's one of the things that attracts me to them and, gets them to just whatever gets them to start something, their story from soup to nuts of like, even if they're not really generating that much income, it's just like, what's their passion? What are they into? And are they going to do anything about it?
Right.
Like, what was was that like an influence towards making like TFE? Like, what was your influence?
That was kind of the starting point, I would say. Back then we were called the Nobodies. So like, we couldn't think of a name at the time. Yeah. So the drummer,
nobodies.
Yeah, the drummer we had at the time called it the Nobodies. He's like, well, let's just keep it for now, And it's
not
actually
bad.
Run with it.
It's not bad. It sounds punk.
It's a nice little temporary solution.
It's kind of like, it's actually not bad. So we ended up doing with the Nobodies for a while,
right.
So I wasn't, the goal was for me to basically, so we didn't have a singer. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll sing the songs that I know, for a little bit until we actually get a singer.
Sure.
Because I wasn't supposed to be a singer. And
me either, by the way.
I
wasn't either.
And we're kind of in that same boat in this sense, because we're not trained singers, we're not, I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of, I'm just doing this thing for now until we, end up doing something. You know? So we kept going on, and it just kind of stuck where I just started doing more songs. So I'm like, oh, I guess I was going to sing this one too. And we just kind of kept going from there, and it kept going from there, and that's kind of how it just kind of started growing, I'd say. We played for the 5-6 people that we knew, having a little birthday party or something.
Right.
It's like, let's get the amps out of the garage.
Anybody who can
the
stomach
uncles
it.
and the aunts.
Begging them to come over, to hear our band.
Dude, we just need some background music. Yeah. Can you play?
I remember we didn't even, at the time I didn't even have an actual mic stand. At the time I was using a music stand that I folded. Duct taped the mic on.
I remember doing janky shit like that.
Oh, dude. And thinking it was the greatest thing in the world, because it was like, it's a mic stand. This is great. I'm making it a mic stand, and I just duct taped it. And
ingenuity.
Yep. And it, it did the whole thing of, it stood up like a regular mic stand did, but we didn't have enough money at the time. We couldn't buy all the good stuff.
You're the MacGyver of musical equipment.
Yeah. We just we played on with what we had.
Yeah.
And like my dad brought in these amps that he had. We were playing stuff that was like dirty, crusty stuff that was in the corner,
like
of the
relics.
House. That we were, shelling out.
Stuff
that was just like
stuff that should be in a museum.
Yeah, let's dust the dust off of it and try to make some music, And it just kind of started from there, And
right on.
we were setting our amps on our chairs, and
we all got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and it's that's how it started.
Right on,
man.
I guess that was kind of my influence to, keep going, I guess.
So where did you when did you create the name or decide on the name The Fallen Electric? Like when did that happen?
So starting this project was I was actually, oh man, it was in 2012, so I would have been about 25 at the time. Because I started right after when the Nobodies, what we had when they broke up, because they were, I had these guys that weren't,
because they were a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah,